The sky hadn't fully brightened. Stars dotted the dark blue canopy like a sparse net. Sand grains glinting cold white in the faint light. You huddled in the natural hollow beneath a camel's belly. Coarse hemp robe damp from last night's dew clinging to your back like a sheet of icy iron. The Gobi's dawn always carried a biting chill. Your knees had long gone stiff, each movement accompanied by the dull grind of joints. This was your 3rd month with the caravan, your 47th night in the desert. Yet your body still refused to make peace with this land. You turned your head and saw crescent-shaped camel droppings embedded in the sand, swollen by dew, giving off a faint, grassy odor. These were the caravan's road markers. Old camel driver Ajif had said fresh dung pointed the way. The heavier, damp side-faced water. Dried lumps made good tinder, high in alkali, ignited easily. You remembered before setting out, the apothecary in Chang'an sold camel dung as medicine, claiming it cured wind paralysis. Back then, you scoffed. Only now did you understand. In the desert, every part of the camel was treasure. Wool for tents, bone for spoons, even fermented milk to stave off hunger for 3 days. Your fingertips brushed the goatskin water pouch. The leather, hard as frozen stone. Bought at Chang'an's West Market. The vendor had thumped his chest, boasting it was crafted by an old master from Hexi, soaked in tung oil 10 times, leak-proof. Yet now, you distinctly felt the gritty rasp of sand shifting at its bottom. A faded red cloth patch sewn on the corner was stuffed in by your wife before departure. Mother's ward against sand demons, she'd said. You bit open the knot, poured a meager sip into your mouth. Water mixed with grit slid down your throat, metallic and astringent. The signature taste of the Tarim River's lower reaches, infused with red silt and salt crusts. That was today's ration. Leader Hassan had decreed no more until sundown. He'd tapped the water pouch with his half-missing finger. In the desert, water's worth more than your father's life. Last year, a lad stole half a pouch, died thirsty 3 miles from a spring. Hassan, a mixed-blood Sogdian, Persian trader father, Khotan dancer mother, bore a scar running from brow to chin. Rumor was it came from a youth spent battling Turks over trade routes, blood staining the sand like a rotten poppy. His shout, hoarse from last night's drink, drifted over the dune. He was kicking a young porter curled on the sand. Still asleep? Waiting for wolves to drag you off for breakfast? The porter, a Tibetan boy named Dorji, captured last month. Still couldn't understand Han's speech, just clutched his head whimpering. You struggled upright, your knee cracked like struck by a blunt instrument. Brushing sand from your robe, you realized the inner layer was damp from dew, chilling your back. The old camel you tended watched you with cloudy eyes, frost clinging to its lashes, dry grass dangling from its mouth. Bought in Kucha, 12 years old, it was older than anyone in the caravan. A crescent-shaped patch of white hair adorned its left foreleg. Ajif called it a lucky sign, warding off sandstorms. Unfastening the cargo bundle, your fingers skimmed the edge of Sichuan brocade. The silk felt cool and slippery as snakeskin, yet carried a stubborn mustiness left over from getting damp in rain last month at Kucha. Hassan said even in Shule, it'd fetch at least 30% less. The bundle held secrets. 10 Persian silver coins hidden in a lining, wrapped in parchment, hard as a biscuit. Road fees for Shul officials. The caravan formed a crooked line, inching toward Shula. As the sun crested the dunes, It baked the sand surface hot. Your straw sandals, soles worn through before departure, now felt like stepping on heated iron plates with every step. Curling your toes to escape the burn only burst blisters. Sticky blood glued rope to raw flesh. Pulling made stars dance before your eyes. Your wife wove these sandals before you left, using Chang'an's dragonbeard grass. Tough enough to tether an ox, she'd said. Yet against Gobi grit, they hadn't lasted 3 days. Glancing down at the sand near your feet, you spotted dark seeds mixed in. Ajif said they were camel thorn seeds, needing just 1 drop to sprout. Suddenly, you felt less than this grass. Grass has roots. You were just a leaf tossed by the wind. Walking ahead was Mez, a Sogdian boy of 16, always humming a strange tune. He said it was a Samarkand lullaby his mother sang. His father owned 3 trading posts there. The boy was meant to learn the ropes, but Hassan tricked him into being a porter. Rumored money enough for 10 fine horses, paid only with a rusty knife and a patched robe. Yesterday, he wept secretly after spilling half his water pouch. Hassan whipped his back, leaving a red welt snaking like an earthworm. You hadn't dared to watch then. Staring only at your own shadow, crushed short by the sun and onto the sand, like a rag ready to blow away. Newcomer. Mez suddenly turned, speaking awkward Han speech. Been to Chang'an? I heard its walls are taller than Samarkand's castles. Streets sell candied fruits sweet enough to glue teeth. His Han was learned from a Tang monk passing Samarkand. His pronunciation mangled Chang'an into Chang'an. A small bronze Buddha hung at his waist. Invited from a Khotan temple. Makes bandits steer clear, he said. You nodded, recalling Chang'an West Market sugar painters. Willow catkins swirling by Kujiang Pond in spring. The jasmine plant your wife always kept on the windowsill. At dawn, she'd pluck dewy buds, tuck them in your sleeve, saying, "Smell these, stay awake." Once you asked her if she knew how far the Silk Road stretched. She pointed to morning glories climbing the courtyard wall. As the vine climbs the wall, so the road leads to its end. But now, only a choked, better than this desert came out. Mez grinned, revealing chipped front teeth, kicked by a camel as a child stealing dates, he claimed. After this trip, I'm going to Chang'an. He thumped his chest. I'll open a shop on Zuke Street, sell Samarkand spices, make my name known to all Chang'an. He pulled out a small cloth bundle, carefully unwrapped it. A few deep red berries. Mother gave them. Said they cure anything. You didn't tell him you'd thought the same 3 months ago. Back then, you were a silk shop clerk in Chang'an, listening to merchants who said 1 silk road trip earned enough for a triple courtyard house. You pocketed 5 years' savings, quit, bid farewell to your red-eyed wife, and plunged headlong into this seemingly endless desert. Now you understood what those merchants omitted. Every coin was mixed with sand, blood, and tears. Like the berries in Mez's hand, you knew them as loco weed fruit from the desert, causing dizziness if eaten. The boy was likely tricked by his mother, just as you were fooled by those merchants. When the noon heat rolled in, even the camels drooped. Their hooves sank half a foot into sand, each lift requiring a wobbly headshake, protesting the endless road. Hassan ordered a rest beneath a ruined beacon tower. Han Dynasty built, its rammed earth walls gnawed hollow by wind, revealing reed layers inside. Legend said soldiers once burned these reeds to signal, smoke reaching towers miles away. You slumped against the scorching wall base, feeling organs shrivel in the heat. Half a pottery shard wedged in a crack bore faint chord patterns. Ajif called it Han military canteen fragment. Scratching it with your nail, it crumbled like biscuit. Beside it lay a rusted iron arrowhead, tip worn bright. Hun workmanship, pierces 3 layers of armor, Ajif remarked. Your hands shook, pulling out the wheat cake. Mother baked it before departure with elm bark powder mixed into flour. Staves off hunger. Now it was hard enough to chip teeth, biting down jammed crumbs between teeth, scraping gums raw. You broke off a piece for Mez. He shoved it in his mouth, choking until his eyes rolled. Old Ajif handed him a leather flask containing fermented juice. Water soaked with desert dates, sour enough to pucker lips but easing the dry cake. Ajif's hands were speckled with age spots, knuckles thick as roots. Frozen from jade diving in the Khotan River in my youth. When I was your age. Ajif suddenly spoke, voice like wind through dead branches. I joined caravans too. Then the Khotan River flowed fuller. We found fist-sized white jade by its banks. He pointed to his earlobe. See this hole? Held a Khotan jade pendant then, chimed when I walked. Now he wore a corroded green copper ring. Lost the pendant fighting Tibetans, almost lost the ear too. You mimicked him, popping an apricot pit in your mouth. A faint sour astringency spread, making your throat itch worse. Coughing wasted spit. Ajif chuckled at you, showing gums with few teeth left. At your age, I dreamed of home too. But the farther I walked, the more this road became home. He pointed to distant dunes. See that ridge? Like the bend in the Khotan River? You followed his gaze. Dunes rolled endlessly, glowing gold red in the sun, resembling no river from home. Yet you nodded, sometimes pretending felt easier than admitting how much you missed it. Careful. Ajif lowered his voice, his broken Han speech tense. Blackstone Mountain ahead. Bandits. His wrinkled finger pointed northwest. Dune silhouettes there shone with a cold metallic sheen against the horizon, like blunt teeth biting the sky. You saw sand streaming off ridges, kicked up dust swirling like a gray snake. Your hand instinctively touched the small knife at your waist. Its wooden hilt felt slippery with sweat, like fish guts. Passed down from grandfather. Used to hack Hun horse bones in the Hexy corridor, scabbard still dented by a hoof. In your hands, it only carved wheat cakes and camel thorns. Half the binding cord frayed off, revealing pale wood grain. Last autumn, Ajif added a dry branch to the fire. Sparks crackled, deepening the shadows on his weathered face. A Khotan caravan was robbed under Blackstone Mountain. Leader was seasoned, 20 guards, still scalped, hung on poplars. Bandits took the silk, dumped saltpeter and sulfur in the wells, springs there still smell foul. Mez went pale. His juice pouch thudded onto sand, spilling purple liquid blooming like a tiny flower. Do they kill? His voice trembled. Han's speech mixed with Sogdian gasps, a scared rabbit shuddering. Hassan strode over, hearing this, spat viciously. Scared? Scared shouldn't walk the silk road. He crouched, grinding the juice stain under his boot heel. Bandits are men too. Want goods, not lives. Hand over hidden silver, knives stay sheathed. But you saw him secretly unhook a bronze bell from his belt, stuffing it into the bundle lining. The bell supposedly scared wolves. Now it was his hidden talisman. Rest ended, Hassan shook the remaining bells. Their thin chimes scattered in the desert vastness, frail as a thread snapping. Shouldering the bundle, you noticed the brocade edge darkened by camel sweat, reeking of wet wool and dust. The smell invaded your nose, recalling silk your wife dried in the courtyard, scented with soapberries and sun. Back then, you complained she made it brittle. Now you realized silk brittled by sun was fortune itself. The caravan moved on, silent. Only camels shuffling steps and distant wind wailing over dunes. Dorji trailed behind, clutching a dead branch, scratching unrecognizable Tibetan symbols into the sand, drawing and erasing, wrestling with himself. Mez clutched your robe hem, fingers icy. Father said Samarkand caravans have guards, crossbows, throwing spears. His whisper barely louder than the wind. Had I known? So frightening. Shouldn't have come. You patted his hand, feeling black grime packed under his bloodied nails, hangnails bleeding. These hands should hold spice scales and ledgers, not grow calluses like yours. Past Blackstone Mountain, you said. Shul has good things. Raisins, sweet enough to glue teeth. Words from an old merchant, unseen by you. Yet Mez's eyes sparked like blown embers as the sun slanted west. The wind finally carried coolness. But it also brought sand, stinging faces like salt, sifting down collars, coating backs. Squinting, you saw distant birds darting, wings flashing white. Ajif called them reed birds, trailing caravans for water. Smarter than men, smell springs 10 miles off. He pointed where they circled. Should be a Karez. Han Dynasty garrison wells. You looked. A patch of darker earth amidst the sand. Clumps of camel thorn, unusually dense. Hassan halted the caravan, sent Dorji with Ajif to find water, while he made you and Mess shift the most valuable brocade and silver coins deeper inside the packs. Remember, he hissed, spittle hitting your cheek, if bandits come, crawl under the camels. They want goods, won't bother with beasts. As he spoke, you saw the wolf-toothed necklace around his neck sway. Carved near the root was a tiny An character, painstakingly scratched. Ajif and Dorji returned carrying steaming earthen jars. Found water. Ajif grinned toothlessly. Shallow well, poison weed nearby. Must boil it. Dorji's face smeared with mud. Grinning, clutching freshly picked desert dates, skins wrinkled as tree bark, but faintly sweet. Gathered around the fire, watching the pot bubble. Dorji tossed dates in. The boiled water tasted sour-sweet, flowing warm down raw throats. Mez secretly filled his pouch. Hassan saw, didn't scold, just poured more hot water in. Past Blackstone Mountain, Hassan declared, Shul land ahead. There, drink sweet water your fill. No one believed him. Old caravan rules. Closer to journey's end, higher the guard. Chewing your cake, you heard Ajif humming a strange tune. A Khotan peace song, he called it, sung at night to ward off evils. Slow and meandering, like a stream over sand. You hummed along, suddenly recalling your wife's lullaby to the child. Same soft tune, different words. Darkness fell as camp pitched in a poplar grove. Autumn-yellowed leaves rustled like shaken paper sheets. Trunks carved with crooked characters. Han's script, Wangergu was here. Sogdian may Ahura Mazda protect. Others unknown. Ajif called them Tibetan peace charms. Hassan set 2 guards, Ajif and Dorji. Dorji found a flint, striking sparks off poplar bark like dangerous play. A chief tethered his old camel outermost, saying it knew men, would bray if bandits came. Wrapped tight in your robe, lying on sand, wolf howls echoed, near and far, counting heads in camp. Mez couldn't sleep. Sidled up, pulling out a small wooden bird carving, a Samarkand sacred bird. Mother carved it, said it brings me home. Its wings polished smooth, inset tiny green stone gleaming faintly under moonlight. You fished out your own bronze talisman, placing both together on sand, copper's chill, wood's warmth, two kinds of longing. Think we'll reach Shul alive? Mez's voice a mosquito hum. You stared at the stars. The Big Dipper hung skewed, same as Chang'an sky. Mother said follow it, always find home. But here, beneath the Dipper, lay only endless sand. Yes, you said, uncertain yourself. Sell the brocade. Buy Shul raisins for you. Mez smiled, chipped teeth like a sneaky child. He pressed the bird carving into your hand. Rub it. Share luck. Deep night. Fire dwindled to glowing embers. Ajif's snores blended with camels chewing, a monotonous tune. Clutching the carving, cool stone against your palm, you suddenly felt. Long as the Silk Road was, it couldn't outdistance the longing in a heart. Like words carved on poplar trunks, whoever left them, all meant to leave some trace of passage in this merciless desert. You closed your eyes. Wind sighed through poplar branches, like weeping, like singing. Tomorrow, 60 miles. Blackstone Mountain, unseen bandits. Yet now, the green stone in your palm, the bronze talisman against your chest, made you feel maybe, just maybe, you'd reach Shul, see that 1,000-year-old mulberry tree by its gate. Sand whispered past your ear, counting the long night, counting the days you might last. But you knew, come dawn, you'd follow the caravan, step by step, toward that land of sweet water. For on this Silk Road, the mere act of walking was the ultimate proof of being alive. The Xiongnu tents began to leak during the 7th full moon. Zhang Qian curled up in a corner of the felt blanket, listening to the northern wind whistling through gaps in the woolen fabric, like sand sifting through a sieve. The iron shackles around his wrists scraped against the wooden post they were chained to, their monotonous creak composing the night's melody he'd grown accustomed to over 3 seasons of captivity. His brocade robe from Chang'an had faded beyond recognition. Elbow patches hardened by steppe humidity into moldy clumps of cotton. The Xiongnu soldiers had taken his ceremonial staff, but left the robe, perhaps deeming Han fabrics too delicate even for horse blankets. Drink. The tent flap lifted, letting in a gust of snowy wind as Hulan entered holding a clay bowl. The red cord in her braid marked her as unmarried. Snowflakes clinging to the strands like scattered silver dust. The mare's milk wine in the bowl had formed a thin ice crust she scraped with a bronze dagger, the shards tinkling as they fell. Zhang Qian turned away. He remembered this Xiongnu girl standing behind the Xiongnu during his capture, her dagger still dripping with his attendant's blood. Now the bowl's rim burned with the warmth of her fingers. The Xiongnu says. She spoke in improving but accented Han dialect, her curled tongue stumbling over sibilants. Drink, and the shackles come off. The chains bit into his flesh as he shifted, leaving bruises like indigo bracelets. His hand instinctively reached for where the great Yuezhi king's edict had been hidden. Now only a blood-stained silk fragment salvaged from his dead guide remained. A Han envoy doesn't drink from enemy cups, he rasped, voice parched like wind-blasted bark. Hulan set the bowl at his feet without reply, tending the fire instead. The silver ornament on her nose bridge, marking her as left virtuous prince's tribeswoman, caught the flames dance. He first saw her using that same ornament to scrape fat from arrow fletchings, movements as practiced as skinning sheep. At midnight, the chain slackened. Zhang Qian opened his eyes to find Hulan kneeling before him, picking at rusted locks with her dagger. Sparks from the fire flecked her lashes as she worked with the delicacy of tending wounded birds. Don't move. Her breath carried sour milk wine vapors across his wrists. 2/4 hour between patrols. The shackles clattered down, leaving red bracelets of swollen flesh. As he rose, she pressed something into his palm. Sun-dried jerky hard enough to crack teeth, yet bearing precious salt crystals. Head 3 li north tomorrow during grazing, she whispered. There's a poplar grove for hiding. Why help me? Zhang Qian searched her eyes, up-tilted like an eagle's, yet holding something murky as ice-filmed ponds. Her sudden smile flashed a tiger tooth in firelight. My mother was Han. She fingered her braid's red cord. She said Han bones stay straight, not bending with the wind like us. She refastened his ankle shackles, but left finger-width gaps. The next day, blizzard winds hurled ice pellets like thrown gravel. Zhang Qian led the Xiongnu's fiercest black stallion, its frost-crusted mane shedding snowflakes. Hulan trailed behind herding sheep with a staff, humming a haunting melody. The migration song, she explained, noticing his listening. It guides wanderers home. Reining her horse abruptly, she pointed at a limping lead sheep. Lost its ear to wolves last year. Now the whole flock follows. Zhang Qian thought of Chang'an scholars debating old horses knowing the way. How beasts proved wiser than men. At noon break, Hulan offered roasted millet mixed with grit, baked with sheep dung fire. She grinned at his grimace, handing him wild chives. Chew these to mask the stink. The chives' pungency brought tears he'd held since spring. In Chang'an now, willow buds should be unfurling along moats where women dug shepherd's purse, their laughter floating down Vermilion Bird Street. Does your Chang'an? Hulan drew a lopsided circle in dirt, have singing sheep. He drew a wave beside it. The Wei River, thrice wider than your northern streams. Summer lotus leaves sail like boats. Adding a square, Wei Yang Palace with glazed tiles blinding in sunlight. Hulan's eyes kindled like starlight, brighter than the golden tent. At his nod, she smudged the drawing. Mother said Han lands shine too harsh. Sunset found them returning when the stallion neighed frantically. Hulan yanked Zhang Qian behind a bluff as drunk warriors galloped past. A lash whistled over her head. Seen any Han rats? Slurred the rider. Only obedient horses, she lied unblinking. After they left, her sweat soaked through Zhang Qian's sleeve. That night, Xiongnu's golden tent echoed with mournful Hujia melodies. Rubbing his loosened shackles, Zhang Qian found the steps chill less biting. By autumn frosts, Hulan could tell full stories in Han dialect. At twilight after milking, she'd recount legends by the fire. Wolves are Tengri's messengers, carrying dead herders to celestial pastures. Her fingers absently stroked a wolf-engraved dagger with turquoise eyes. The shackles had become slack leather cords. The Xiongnu seemed to have forgotten his stubborn Han envoy, leaving only a mute herdsman guard who carved blunt-tipped arrows, perhaps believing human and Xiongnu blood equally crimson. When migrating geese arrowed northwest, Hulan brought birch bark and charcoal. A Sogdian merchant goes to Yumen Pass next month. Zhang Qian's trembling hand wrote 8 characters. Han's soil remembers. Your servant remains. The words bled charcoal dust like seeds struggling in sand. Hulan tucked the bark into her breast pouch. They'll think it maiden's trinkets. Her blush recalled Chang'an peach blossoms. The winter storm saw her sewing a sheepskin coat, clumsy stitches warming better than ruined brocade. A 6-petaled chrysanthemum hid on the collar, perhaps confusing Han flowers with golden broom. Mother embroidered homesickness into clothes. She revealed a butterfly silver hairpin. For when I wed. When summoned to the golden tent, the Xiongnu dangled Zhang Qian's moth-eaten staff. Serve me in the west, he offered. Become left solid marquis with 10 herds. Take Hulan as Yanji. Zhang Qian straightened, chains chiming at his ankles. This Han envoy dies a Han ghost. As guards dragged him out, Hulan slipped him familiar salted wolf jerky. Her pleading words to the Xiongnu made silver hair ornaments chime like broken bells. Spring came with the mute herdsman's death. At his funeral, 3 mare's milk libations and a live sheep honored Xiongnu rites. Zhang Qian finally understood the blunt arrows. When geese returned, Hulan had news. Yumen's commander changed. Your letters won't reach. He placed the butterfly pin in her hair. Wings caught sunlight, like imminent flight. That night, under rebel threats, Hulan packed provisions, pressing his hand to her belly's slight swell, warmer than Chang'an's spring hopes. She whispered, "This child won't be born in blood." They fled south under moonless sky. The stallion's hooves shattered river ice as wolves howled farewells. Hulan pointed to the southern star. Mother called it Longevity Star, guides wanderers home. Chang'an's phantom lanterns seemed to glimmer ahead as ice cracks echoed like knocking on homeland's gates. The Taklamakan Desert in March 1900. Sand grains shimmered with a blinding white glare under the noonday sun. Sven Hedin's expedition had already been trekking through the desert for 17 days. The hooves of their camels crunched on the cracked salt crust beneath, sounding like stepping on shattered glass. Waves of heat shimmered visibly in the air. Distant dunes warped into grotesque shapes in the rising heat, one moment resembling a camel train, the next like crumbling city walls. Suddenly, the guide, Abdurrahman, reined in his mount, his face beneath his sheepskin cap contorted and his horsewhip clattered onto the sand. "Sir, the shovel." "My shovel is gone." Hayden straightened up on his camel. The edge of the canvas tent flapped loudly in the wind, like the sound of someone far off cracking a wet towel. His Hungarian-made leather boots were long worn through by the gravel. His toes felt the burning sand directly, as if standing on a scorching iron plate. The thermometer showed the ground temperature had reached 58 degrees Celsius, 136 degrees Fahrenheit, making even the metal canteen too hot to touch. When was it noticed? His German was laced with Turkish-like trills, a skill honed through dealings with Central Asian caravans. Each syllable felt coarse, rubbed by sand. "It was there when we rested by Lake Norkul this morning," Abdurrahman said, twisting his camel's reins as he scanned the wind-smooth sand surface, where footprints were vanishing before their eyes. "It must be nearby." That Kantuman was passed down from my grandfather. It had a copper edge. His voice trembled, knuckles white from gripping the reins. That shovel wasn't just a tool. It was a talisman for desert crossings. The local Loplik people believed an old blacksmith's iron could guard against sand demons, desert spirits. The copper edge had been consecrated with ancestral blood over 7 generations, said to point the way during sandstorms. Hayden sighed, his Adam's apple moving visibly beneath parched skin. The expedition's water bags were nearly empty. Last night's inventory showed less than 2 liters remained in the final skin, its surface streaked with a faint, oily film. Traces of camel milk, barely enough for the whole team until tomorrow noon. But he knew, in this go in and don't come out sea of death, any tool could mean life or death. A shovel could dig a well, pry open boulders, even serve as a weapon against wolves. He waved his hand, ordering the men to spread out and search. Follow the tracks back 300 paces. Look for any glint on the sand. The copper edge will shine. Sand grit worked its way into boot seams, grinding painfully against ankles like countless ants gnawing bone. As Hayden bent to push aside a clump of camel thorn, the hard salt crust scraped his knuckles. Blood dripped onto the sand and vanished instantly, leaving only a dark spot, like a small ink dot. He remembered the warning from the British consul in Kashgar 3 months prior. The Taklamakan sand is more cunning than the devil. It steals your water, your compass, and finally, your memory. Last year, a Swedish explorer entered reciting the Quran. He emerged forgetting his own name. Found it. Abdurrahman's shout came from behind a dune, filled with tremulous relief. When Hedin climbed up, he saw the guide kneeling beside a low tamarisk thicket, holding the copper-edged shovel. Its blade was lodged in a piece of wood protruding from the sand. The wood's edges were blackened, carved with strange patterns like entwined snakes, or the Sogdian character for water. Tamarisk roots clung tightly to the plank, tangling threads of fine cotton fiber, the grit-worn residue of fabric. "This isn't poplar," Hedin said, pulling out a magnifying glass. The lens focused sunlight into a bright spot, making the wood smoke slightly and emit a burnt smell. He probed the wood grain at the breakpoint. It was dense, hard, with a faint scent of pine resin. It was cypress. This tree only grew above 3,000 meters in the Tian Shan Mountains, requiring at least 600 millimeters of annual rainfall. How could it appear here, deep in a desert receiving less than 10 millimeters? Unless this place hadn't always been desert. The team eagerly scraped away the surrounding sand, revealing more planks crisscrossed into a square frame, like an upturned coffin. Hayden had Abdurrahman mark the spot and measured it. Roughly 12 paces east-west, 9 paces north-south. Wedged between the planks were dry reeds, their seed heads coated in fine cotton fluff, shimmering silver-white in the sun. He counted the reed nodes. 15. This meant the reeds were cut in midsummer. Only then were they tough enough for reinforcing structures. "It's a house," Hayden whispered, his heart pounding like a drum against his ribs, making his ears ring. He recalled a legend heard in Kusha last winter. Deep in Lop Nur lay a wind-buried ancient city inhabited by flying spirits who breathed beneath the sand. Their houses weren't made of earth, only wood and reeds, because spirits fear being trapped by the land. He dismissed it as herdsman's fancy. Yet, here on the plank before him, etched clearly, were symbols strikingly similar to Karasti's script found at Nia, the curves fluid and beautiful. As the setting sun dyed the dunes crimson gold, they unearthed the first wall. The sun-dried mud bricks were mixed with tamarisk twigs and clay. Their surfaces bore clear fingerprints, the solidified warmth of artisans 2 millennia ago. One thumbprint was particularly deep, as if pressed with force, its edge catching a tiny hair that fluttered in the breeze. Brick crevices held charred grains of millet, shells carbonized yet plumply curved, shorter and stockier than the millet grown around the Taklamakan today. Abdurrahman rubbed the grains in his palm and gasped. It's an improved variety. More drought-resistant than ours. Look at the husk, twice as thick as normal millet. At nightfall, the expedition camped by the ruins. As their bonfire rose, sparks whirled in the twilight like startled fireflies. Hayden noticed the sand near the fire was unusually warm. Digging down, he uncovered a thick layer of ash, black streaked with white, like crushed charcoal. Mixed in were pottery shards and animal bones. Lifting a deer bone fragment with a shovel, he noted clean cut marks across the break, made by a stone blade held firm against a haft. Smoke residue clung to the bone. These people ate venison, he told Paul the recorder. And they knew to remove sinew, no primitive tribe. See the knife marks? Even spacing. Likely a stone blade fixed to a wooden handle, not just a random rock. Paul's pen scratched on goatskin parchment. The alcohol in his ink bottle was nearly gone. He diluted it with camel urine, giving the ink a faintly pungent smell. Sir, look at this shard. He held up a palm-sized fragment painted with a running figure in a long robe, holding a staff topped with a wheel-like sun radiating 16 straight rays like arrows. It resembles Persian sun gods. Sasanian dynasty coins show Mithra just like this. As Hayden took the shard, his fingertips traced its crackled glaze, like touching a frozen river surface. The pottery body was bluish-gray, with a thin, uneven yellow glaze spattered with green flecks where cobalt seeped through. He recalled seeing Sasanian coins at the Tehran Museum. The reverse sun god had the same wheel-shaped crown, even the same number of rays. Could this city have been an outpost for spreading Persian culture east? Were those robed figures Persian merchants on religious missions? A wind rose at midnight, awakening Hayden to an odd sound. Sand pelted the tent like someone lightly scratching with fingernails, intermittent and probing. He gripped his revolver, its checkered grip slick with sweat, and lifted a tent flap. In the moonlight, Abdurrahman knelt before the mud wall, cupping sand in his hands, chanting low like wind through an ocarina, making an offering to the city god. The guide said sheepishly as Hayden appeared, revealing a gap in his front teeth. My grandfather said disturbing an underground city requires a blood sacrifice. Sure enough, a fresh cut marked his wrist. Droplets of blood dripped into the brick crevices, like watering the ancient wall. Hayden stayed silent, watching moonlight cast shadows on the ruins. The broken walls seemed to come alive, unfolding across the sand into streets, palaces, markets. He imagined camel bells tinkling in the wind, clear and metallic. Merchants haggling in rapid-fire Sogdian like scattering beans. Lute music drifting from taverns, faint as spider silk, but carrying far in the desert silence. The strings seeming steeped in wine aged 2,000 years. Just before dawn, the team made a startling find in a half-buried room. Abdurrahman's shovel struck something hard with a sharp clang, sending a shock up his arm. They dug out a body lying on its side, clad in crimson silk robes embroidered with scrolling foliage patterns at the collar, its lines dusted with traces of gold powder, remnants of gold thread. Her hair was braided into dozens of thin plaits, each tip tied with a small jade bead made of soft white Hettion nephrite, polished smooth and oily. "It's a woman," Paul stammered, nearly dropping his pen. Her desiccated skin was dark brown yet retained elasticity, springing back slightly when pressed. Deep-set eye sockets held eyelashes like frozen spider webs, gleaming silver white in the dawn light, long and curled as if meticulously groomed. Her right hand rested on her abdomen, fingers curled, clutching a worn wooden plaque carved with Kharosthi script, the strokes polished shiny and edges rounded by handling. Hayden knelt, gently brushing sand off the plaque with a soft brush, tender as stroking a sleeping bird. Sunlight broke through the clouds just then, its beam landing on the plaque. He made out the inscription, Krorena. It struck him like lightning. The Sanskrit word for Lulan, the kingdom recorded in the Book of Han, account of the western regions. The Lulan Kingdom, capital at Uni City, 1,600 li from Yang Pass, lying hidden beneath these scorching sands. In the gray dawn light, Hayden squatted beside the female mummy, watching sunlight like melting honey creep over her face. Her skin, like tanned sheepskin stretched over bone, still showed the texture of her former life. A faint blush high on her cheekbones, from oxidized iron ingrained in the desert sand, as if she were merely sleeping, wind-chapped. Her brow ridge was prominent. Fine sand filled the hollows beneath her eyes, like silted moonlight. Minuscule salt crystals sparkled on her eyelashes, residue from dried Lop Lake. Abdurrahman carefully brushed sand away from her form with the shovel, gentle as tucking in a baby. The blade hit something hard with a metallic chink. He spotted a bracelet encircling her wrist, alternating beads of lapis lazuli and carnelian, each polished smooth with wear, tiny rope grooves visible in their perforations. She wore these at least a decade. Hayden said, using tweezers to lift a lapis bead towards the rising sun, its internal golden pyrite flecks unfurled like nebulae, characteristic of stone from Badakhshan mines in northeast Afghanistan. It would have traversed dozens of stops, Kabul, Samarkand, Kashgar, to reach Lulan. He remembered Kushan Empire gold coins from the Peshawar Museum. Their reverse featured the fertility goddess Ardaksho wearing a nearly identical bracelet, the carnelian beads cut at the same angles. This woman was at least a rich merchant's wife, Hayden stated, setting the tweezers down, fingertips still cool from the stone. Ordinary herders couldn't afford Afghan lapis. Back then, a liang could buy 3 camels. Systematic digging began. 3 meters from the woman, Paul's trowel struck something soft. Brushing back the sand, he found a stack of neatly folded silk. Much was carbonized, deep brown like crumpled bark, disintegrating at a touch. A few pieces retained vibrant color. Indigo backgrounds embroidered with scrolling patterns, gold threads faintly glowing in the sun. Twisted gold thread, each strand comprising 12 silk filaments wrapping gold foil. Only workshops like Jinhua Fang in Chang'an's West Market mastered this technique. Measuring with a soft tape, Hayden found the silk's bolt width was exactly 2 chi and 2 kun, approximately 70 centimeters, with a clear selvage edge. classic Central Plains weaving. He'd seen weavers treading looms in Chang'an last year. The width remained unchanged. This silk is likely Shu brocade transported from Chang'an, he explained, pointing to the pattern. The scrolling flora hides a phoenix silhouette. Soaring phoenix pattern popular during Emperor Cheng of Han's reign, identical to findings at Mancheng Han tombs. Documents! Abdurrahman's excited cry echoed. From a pile of rotted wood, he pulled a piece of birch bark, its edges darkened but center still resilient, crudely scratched with a few lines of Kharosthi script. Hastily written, letters overlapping. Hayden had Paul make an ink rubbing on rice paper immediately. Though much was blurred, soaking it in water revealed words like Khotan, camels, 30, pepper. Looks like a trade inventory, Hayden confirmed through his magnifier. 30 camel loads of goods from Khotan, including pepper, costlier than gold back then, transported from India's west coast via the Kushans. He noticed a faint thumbprint on the bark's backside, left thumb, its edge bearing a small indentation. The writer injured their left thumb. As the sun climbed higher, heat radiated from the sand. Sweat beaded on the men's brows, sizzling where it fell. In a half-collapsed house, Paul's shovel hit something solid with a dull thud. Excavating revealed an intact pottery jar sealed with coarse cloth. Opening it, they found dozens of wheat seeds, hulls still golden like pearls kissed by sunlight. Hayden picked one up and chewed, dry but fragrant, earthy. Winter wheat, he said, spitting out the husk. Sown in autumn, harvested summer, needs at least 400 millimeters rain over the growing season or reliable irrigation. He pointed to deposits inside the jar. This calcified grit at the bottom, constant water exposure. There had to be a river here for irrigation. Abdurrahman suddenly pointed to a pile of reeds in a corner. Sir, look. These reeds are tied with tamarisk twigs, each bundle exactly 10 jin, approximately. 5 kilograms, like for roofing. He picked up a reed. Wet mud clung to its roots. Pinching the mud, it contained tiny shells. Freshwater snails, only found in silt near rivers or lakes, their growth rings indicating at least 2,000 years old. Hayden's pulse quickened. The Taklamakan's heart was endorheic now. Less than 20 millimeters annual rain. Tamarisk sparse. But these shells proved a freshwater lake, at least 1 meter deep, had existed here. The ancient shore of Lop Lake. He sketched rapidly in his notebook. The lake surface must have stretched this far. The Lulan people irrigated their wheat with lake water. During the noon break, Hayden spread a goatskin map and circled Lulan's position in pencil. Geographically, it sat at the ancient terminus of the Tarim River. South of the Kunlun Mountains' glacial meltwater-fed Churchin River, north of the Tian Shan-fed Peacock River, like a relay station pinched between two snow-capped ranges. This wasn't an isolated city. He rapped the circle with his knuckle. It was a hub on the Southern Silk Road. Silk from the Central Plains went west through here. Jade and spices from the western regions moved east. Kushan coins, Persian glass, all passed through. Paul suddenly pointed to a small pottery jar near the woman's feet. There's something inside. Tilting it carefully, out spilled red powder with a pungent, metallic scent like rust. Hayden dipped a fingertip and rubbed. The powder stained vividly red, metallic in the sun. Cinnabar, he breathed, pupils dilating. at least 90% mercury sulfide. Native to Chenzhou in the Central Plains, brought here via the Hexi Corridor and the Jade Gate Pass. Used as a preservative in Central Plains nobility tombs, it was exceptionally rare in the western regions. Hayden had only found traces before at Nia, never an entire jar. This woman's status, perhaps higher than we thought, Hayden speculated. Maybe Lulan royalty, or a high-ranking trade official's family. Afternoon excavations brought a breakthrough. In the city's center, Abdurrahman's shovel hit smooth stone. Clearing sand revealed what resembled an altar. 10 finely polished bluestone slabs formed a circle, a 30-centimeter depression in the center holding black ash mixed with animal bone fragments. Abdurrahman retrieved a small jade bead disc from the ash, palm-sized, its edge chipped cleanly as if deliberately broken. For sacrifice, he stated, tracing the chip. We Loplik people still do this, offering jade bai to the river god. Breaking a piece signifies the god accepts. He pointed to incised patterns on the slabs. These are water wave designs, identical to rock paintings along the Peacock River, praying for abundant water. At sunset, Hayden understood. Lulan died by water. Tibetan Plateau's uplift diverted rivers, desiccating Lop Nur. City veins severed, the desert drank its corpse. Time to leave. Hayden watched last light gild the woman's face. Lapis beads glowed like fallen stars. Lulan wasn't dead, he felt, just buried seed awaiting rediscovery. Abdurrahim sowed modern wheat in the altar basin. Maybe spring brings grass. Hayden stored Karasti documents, keys to Lulan's commerce, prayers, thirst. Sands erased their tracks like velvet drapery. Final sunlight caught lapis sparkles, a farewell wink across millennia, whispering, "We remember." Under Samarkand's July sun, heavy grape clusters hung from vines like solidified wine, their purple-black berries glistening with dewy, pearl-like frost. These had to be picked before dawn and soaked in camel milk, a secret method perfected by the Vaksuti family over 3 centuries. Their caravanserai stood enclosed by vineyards, its ochre-plastered walls adorned with hematite frescoes. Merchants on camels spearing fleeing gazelles with lapis lazuli eyes, each of 17 sand grains meticulously gilded. As Vaksuti pushed open latticed shutters, dew dripped from grape leaves into the courtyard fountain, splashing over Persian inscriptions his grandfather had carved into stone. Prayers to Ahura Mazda for safe passage to Chang'an, inlaid with glass beads. Water seeped from bronze peacock tail spouts, etching grooves into the limestone basin after 50 years of ceaseless flow. He wore indigo linen, dyed with Indus Valley indigo, a 40-day process costing 3 camels per bolt, more precious than silver, embroidered at the collar with phoenixes. "Master, the Khotan caravan approaches," Steward Bahram announced, honey glistening in his white beard. On his brass tray lay 3 seals, a Turkic wolf's head with obsidian eyes, a bronze Tang Protectorate seal with angular characters, and the family crest, an eagle gripping silk threads woven with gold, shimmering softly. Vaksuti sliced musk-scented wax with an ivory knife, unrolling a lambskin scroll. Khotan merchant Mahad's rounded Sogdian script listed 50 silk bolts, 10 Sichuan brocades patterned with pearl roundels, 300 caddies of banana leaf-wrapped pepper, and 2 chests of palace bronze mirrors engraved endless longevity. "Store pepper eastward." Vaksuti marked the scroll with a coral-tipped stylus. Air the silk beneath vines for 3 days. Last year's Kucha shipment bred moths that consumed 30%. After Bahram withdrew, Vaksuti traced a painted camel saddlecloth patterned with Sasanian pearl roundels, each concealing a tiny Zoroastrian flame. A design bartered from Persia for 3 crates of porcelain. The fountain gurgled treacherously. Byzantine plumber Simeon's work remained unreliable. Father, teach me Han characters. Barefoot 10-year-old Nazir burst in, toes stained with grape juice. His birch bark scrawl showed wriggling symbols for heaven, earth, human. He clutched a Sogdian transcribed annexed. Purchased for 20 silk bolts in Luoyang, its edges frayed from constant reading. Master your own script first. Vaksuti wiped grape-scented sweat from his son's nose. This human resembles 2 figures supporting one another, not random strokes. Ledgers bound in tooled leather revealed tributary expenses. 10 brocades, 2 gold threaded for the Turkic Yabgu's wife, honey-dipped grapes for Tang generals, a golden ritual brazier for Zoroastrian priests concealing family records of royal dealings, vines strangling 30% of yearly profits. At noon prayer, Arabian frankincense scented the fire temple. May Ahura Mazda guard our trade routes. Angra Mainyu spare our camels, chanted the priest as rosewood, myrrh, and sandalwood ashes layered like stratified silk road dust. Under sunset's lengthening shadows, Vaksuti climbed the walnut balcony carved with lotuses by his father's hand. Samarkand sprawled below. Gilded mosque domes, camel trains ringing like water into the gates, distant snow peaks flushing pink in twilight. He clasped a white jade amulet engraved "Long Life," gifted in Dunhuang by a blind artisan who refused coin, taking only tea. Master, Turks send word. Bahram gasped, sweat-soaked robe clinging to his legs, clutching a wolf-sealed letter crusted with messenger's dried blood. Vaksuti's fist tightened around the jade, cold as buried ice. Each such scroll meant heavier tribute or war demands. With ivory blade, he sliced musk-scented wax. Coarse Turkic script demanded 30% more levies or closure of the Altai mountain pass. Highway robbers. Vaksuti slammed the letter, rattling Tang camphor incense burning in gilt bronze. Moonlight revealed Amina playing Persian melodies on a 7-string guqin, draped in Yuezhu gauze. Tibet offers 500 steeds for me, but I yearn for Chang'an, where women read classics and ride horses. Vaksuti touched her pearl-braided hair. Persian Gulf gems, 12 times sorted, remembering his hostage son studying annexed in Chang'an, but dreaming of Samarkand's vineyards. Silk Road children were bargaining tokens. Pawns moved only by the board's rigid design. Past midnight, Vaksuti inspected bronze mirrors polished like liquid, their backs carved with Tang grapes and Sogdian blessings. Double language treasures, fetching 30% extra in Chang'an's markets. He tapped one. Its chime echoed temple bells. Speed these westward. The new royal consort's vanity may open palace doors. Rejected Persian glassware sat ignored, bubbles trapped inside like tiny stars. Melt these with lead, he ordered the quartermaster. Tang lords prize luminous cups, all shine, no substance. By dawn, ledgers recorded fresh tributes. 2 chests of pepper for Turks, 10 gold brocades for Tang. His fingers, stained red from Chenzhou cinnabar ink, brushed parchment as Bahram murmured wearily, Khotan merchants demand 5 copper coins extra per silk bolt. Tang inspectors tightened hexy corridor checks. The numbers writhed like snakes beneath candlelight. Vaksuti recalled his grandfather's warning. Silk Road fortunes are desert mirages, solid seeming until touched. Sunrise scattered gold dust over the fountain's spray. Standing atop the city walls, he watched caravans dissolve into horizon fog. Camel bells fading like forgotten dreams, his jade amulet warmed by generations of touch. How many more dawns could this fragile wealth endure? Just now, we followed Zhang Qian's footsteps through the sand and camel bells of the Silk Road, witnessing the tenacity and legend of his opening up the western regions. And tonight, as the firelight of the fireplace still flickers gently, let's turn our gaze to the distant shores of the Mediterranean. Next, let's step into the life of Alexander the Great and see how this Macedonian conqueror traversed Europe, Asia, and Africa with his iron cavalry, leaving his brilliant mark on the long scroll of history. Imagine waking before dawn, not to an alarm, but to the creak of leather and the stench of unwashed bodies. Your bed is a pile of straw, if you're lucky. More likely, just the hard ground, pressed flat by the weight of 1,000 men before you. The air smells of sweat, horse dung, and the faint, acrid tang of unburned campfire smoke. This is your world, as a foot soldier in Alexander's army, a world of endless movement. You roll over, and your joints ache. Yesterday, you marched 20 miles under a sun that seared your neck raw. Today, you'll do it again. There's no rest day. Alexander's army doesn't stop, not for rain, not for blisters, not for the cough that's been hacking at the man next to you for days. You pull on your tunic, stiff with dirt, and grab your shield. It's dented, heavy, and you've carried it for so long the strap has rubbed a callus into your shoulder. Breakfast is a handful of hard bread, maybe a sip of sour wine if the supply train hasn't fallen behind. No plates, no tables. You squat in the dirt, sharing your rations with the man from your unit. A farmer from Macedonia who hasn't seen his wife in 3 years. He talks about his son, now old enough to hold a plow. And you nod, but your mind is on the sandals on your feet. The soul is splitting, and there's no cobbler here. You'll wrap them in rags tonight, if you have the energy. Then the trumpet blares. Formation. You line up, shield to shield, spear in hand. The phalanx moves like a single beast, slow and relentless. Dust fills your mouth as you march. Your throat is dry, but you don't dare drink. Water is scarce, and the canteen at your hip holds just enough to get you through the day. By noon, the sun beats down so fiercely that men start to stagger. One collapses beside you, face purple, and no one stops. The medics are too busy with the wounded from yesterday's skirmish. Evening brings no relief. You pitch your tent, a tattered thing, patched so many times it's more holes than cloth. As the officers shout orders, dinner is the same as breakfast, unless someone managed to catch a rabbit. And tonight, no one did. You scrub your feet in a muddy stream, wincing at the blisters, and listen to the generals talk of glory and destiny. Glory feels like a distant word when your back aches and your stomach growls. Night falls, and the camp is a symphony of snores, coughs, and the occasional scream from a man reliving battle in his dreams. You lie awake, staring at the stars, and wonder if you'll ever see your home again. This is life in Alexander's army. Not heroism, but endurance. One step, then another, until your body can't take it anymore. This is where we start. With the ones who made his legend possible, but whose names were never written down. While you ached in the dust of the phalanx, the man leading you carried a different kind of weight. A crown, a legacy, and a father's shadow that never quite lifted. Let us turn to him, Alexander of Macedon, the boy who would be a god. He was born in 356 BCE in Pella, the Macedonian capital, to King Philip II and Queen Olympias. Even as a child, he was no ordinary prince. His tutor, Aristotle, taught him philosophy, science, and poetry. Homer's Iliad became his Bible, and he carried a copy with him everywhere, annotated in his own hand. But it was not just books that shaped him. His father, Philip, was a warrior king who turned Macedonia from a backwater into a powerhouse, uniting the fractious Greek city-states under his rule. Alexander grew up watching Philip command armies, forge alliances, and drink deep from the cup of power. And even as a boy, he resented sharing that cup. At 16, while Philip was away at war, Alexander was left to govern Macedonia. It was a test, and he passed it, crushing a rebellion in Thrace with a speed that shocked his advisors. 2 years later, at Chaeronea, he led the Macedonian cavalry charge that broke the Athenian line, securing Philip's victory over the Greeks. After the battle, Philip knelt to kiss him, but Alexander's eyes were cold. "Do you now recognize me as your son?" he is said to have asked. Philip laughed, but the tension lingered. A father and son, both lions, in a cage too small for two. Then, in 336 BCE, everything changed. Philip was assassinated at his own wedding, stabbed by a bodyguard named Pausanias. The motive? Some say revenge. Pausanias had been humiliated by Philip's allies. Others whisper of a conspiracy, even implicating Olympias, who hated Philip's new wife. For Alexander, 20 years old and suddenly king, there was no time for grief. The Greek city-states, sensing weakness, revolted. The northern tribes rose up. Alexander moved like a storm. He crushed Thebes, burning it to the ground as a warning, and forced the others to submit. By the time he turned 21, his throne was secure. But Macedonia was not enough. He wanted what his father had dreamed of. Persia. In 334 BCE, he crossed the Hellespont with 35,000 troops, including that phalanx you marched in. His first test came at the Granicus River, where a Persian army waited on the far bank. The Persians thought the young king would hesitate. Rivers are death to phalanxes. But Alexander did not hesitate. He led his cavalry straight into the current, sword in hand, his cloak billowing like a flag. He took a spear to the thigh, blood soaking his tunic. But he kept fighting, cutting down the Persian governor with his own blade. When the dust settled, the Persians fled. Alexander, bleeding, stood on the riverbank and smiled. This was just the beginning. What followed was a decade of conquest, but not the triumphs of legend, though there were those. It was a grind. Endless marches through deserts and mountains, sieges that dragged on for months. Betrayal from his own men. At Gaugamela, he faced Darius III, the Persian king, with an army half the size. He won by feinting, by trusting his cavalry, by refusing to retreat even when the center of his line began to break. But victory brought no peace. Darius fled, and Alexander chased him, only to find him murdered by his own satraps. "He was my king too," Alexander said, covering Darius's body with his cloak. For a moment, the boy who dreamed of glory looked like a man who'd realized victory tastes of ash. He drank to excess, sometimes for days, and his temper flared. Once, in a drunken rage, he killed Clitus, a friend who'd saved his life at Granicus, after Clitus accused him of forgetting his Macedonian roots. Alexander wept for 3 days afterward, refusing food. He began to adopt Persian customs, wearing their robes, demanding prostration, a practice alien to Greeks. And his men resented it. "We followed a king, not a god," they muttered. By 327 BCE, they'd had enough. When he ordered them to march into India, they mutinied. Alexander pleaded, threatened, even prayed to the gods, but they stood firm. For the first time, he backed down. The journey home was brutal. His army crossed the Gedrosian desert, where men and horses died of thirst, their lips cracked and black. Alexander himself nearly perished, contracting a fever that lingered for months. By the time they reached Babylon in 323 BCE, he was a shadow of the man who'd crossed the Hellespont. He died that June, at 32, in his palace, his body burning with fever, his breath shallow. His last words? When asked who should inherit his empire, he whispered, "To the strongest." And so his story ended, not with a god's triumph, but a man's exhaustion. A life of chasing glory, only to find it as fleeting as the dust of his own armies. This was the man behind the legend, brilliant, broken, and forever reaching for something just beyond his grasp. Let us turn now to a question that has lingered for over 2 millennia. A puzzle carved into the dust of time. Where is Alexander the Great buried? His death in Babylon in 323 BCE set in motion a journey for his body as extraordinary as his life. His generals, already jockeying for power, argued over where to lay him to rest. Alexander had once said he wished to be buried in the temple of Zeus Ammon in Siwa, Egypt, where he'd traveled as a young man to consult the oracle, who declared him the son of the god. But his body, preserved in a golden sarcophagus filled with honey, an ancient method of embalming, became a political pawn. Ptolemy, one of his most trusted generals, intercepted the funeral procession as it marched toward Macedonia. He rerouted it to Egypt, eventually placing it in Memphis, then later moving it to Alexandria, the city Alexander himself had founded. For centuries, the tomb was a pilgrimage site. Julius Caesar visited it, reportedly weeping at the sight of Alexander's mummified body. Augustus touched the sarcophagus, accidentally knocking off Alexander's nose, or so the story goes. Even Hadrian, the Roman emperor, paid his respects, leaving a crown of gold at the tomb. But then, slowly, the trail goes cold. By the 4th century CE, references to the tomb in historical records fade. By the Middle Ages, it's as if it vanished into the sand. No one knows for certain what happened. Did it crumble in one of Alexandria's many earthquakes? Was it looted and destroyed by invaders, its gold sarcophagus melted down? Or is it still there, hidden beneath the modern city? waiting to be found. Imagine standing in Alexandria today, where the Mediterranean laps at the shore and skyscrapers rise above ancient streets. Beneath your feet, perhaps, lies the answer. In the 19th century, archaeologists dug in the Qom el-Shukafa catacombs, a labyrinth of Roman-era tombs, hoping to find traces, but only found mummies of lesser nobles. In the 1990s, a team uncovered a marble statue of Alexander near the Soma, the ancient district where his tomb was said to stand, but no sarcophagus. More recently, radar scans beneath the city's center revealed empty chambers, their walls marked with faint inscriptions that might be Macedonian. But nothing conclusive. Legends cling to the mystery like ivy. Some say Alexander's ghost haunts the city, restless because his body was never laid to rest as he wished. Others whisper that his tomb holds more than his remains, that it's filled with treasures from his conquests. Persian gold, Babylonian scrolls, perhaps even the lost books of Aristotle's library. There are those who believe the tomb was deliberately hidden, its location erased by later rulers to prevent it from becoming a symbol of Macedonian power. What makes this mystery endure? It is not just the allure of finding a king's final resting place. It is the way it mirrors Alexander's own life. Brilliant, elusive, always just beyond our grasp. He spent his life chasing the edges of the known world. In death, he continues to elude our attempts to pin him down. This is the magic of the past. Not just what we know, but what we almost know. Those gaps where wonder takes root. If the foot soldiers' world was dust and blisters, the elite who walked beside Alexander lived in a realm of silk and wine. A world where the air smelled of perfume instead of sweat, and the ground beneath their feet was often carpeted, not hard-packed dirt. Let us step into that circle, where power was as tangible as the gold on their belts. Imagine you are a Macedonian noble, a companion of the king, one of the hetairoi, the elite cavalry who rode at Alexander's side. Your tent is no tattered scrap of cloth, but a pavilion of dyed linen, stitched with patterns of lions and eagles. Inside, a cot draped with Persian silks waits for you, stuffed with down instead of straw. When you wake, a servant kneels to slip soft leather boots onto your feet. No splitting soles here. These are tooled with silver, made by craftsmen from Sardes. Breakfast is a spread laid out on a low table of cedar. Warm bread drizzled with honey, figs from Cilicia, cheese from Macedonia, and a cup of spiced wine. Not the sour stuff the soldiers drink. A slave pours it for you, his head bowed. A prisoner of war, perhaps, from one of the eastern campaigns. You eat slowly, listening to the murmur of other nobles outside, discussing the day's plans. Strategy, not survival, is on your mind. Your armor is not the dented bronze of the phalanx, but a cuirass of overlapping scales, polished to a shine, inlaid with gold. When you mount your horse, a stallion from the royal stables, sleek and well-fed, your saddle is padded with wool, and the reins are wrapped in silk. Riding beside Alexander, you see the world differently, not as an endless trudge, but as a series of conquests, each city a new jewel in the empire. Evening brings feasts, not rations. In the king's pavilion, torches flicker against walls hung with tapestries from Babylon, depicting gardens and hunting scenes. The table groans with roasted meats, lamb, wild boar, even peacock, a delicacy from Persia, accompanied by sauces made with pomegranate and saffron. Wine flows from silver cups, and musicians play lyres and flutes while dancers from Bactria perform, their movements slow and graceful. Here, power is negotiated over cups. You debate with Ptolemy and Hephaestion, Alexander's closest friend, about whether to march east or consolidate the west. Alexander, his tunic now a mix of Macedonian and Persian styles, listens, his fingers tapping the arm of his chair. Sometimes he laughs, loud and sudden, and the room falls quiet. Sometimes he grows serious, his gaze far away. And you wonder what dreams, what obsessions are churning behind those eyes. Not all luxury comes from war. As Alexander's empire expanded, so did the elite's world. Persian satraps, once enemies, now join these feasts, wearing their traditional robes of purple and white, bringing gifts of jade and ivory. Greek scholars, brought from Athens, debate philosophy in the corners, while Egyptian priests explain their gods. It is a melting pot of cultures held together by Alexander's will and by the gold that flows from conquered treasuries. But even here, there is tension. The older Macedonian nobles grumble about the Easternization of their king, his adoption of proskynesis. The Persian custom of bowing to royalty feels like a betrayal of their equal warrior culture. The Persian elites, in turn, wonder if they are allies or prisoners. Their power a thin veil over subjugation. Luxury, it turns out, is not without its own weight. When the feast ends, you retire to your tent, the sounds of the camp muted by the thick linen walls. Outside, a soldier coughs in the dark, his cough a faint counterpoint to the soft music still drifting from the king's pavilion. Two worlds side by side, bound by the same man, yet as different as night and day. This is the other face of empire, not just the struggle of the many, but the privilege of the few. A reminder that history is woven from countless threads, some coarse, some fine, all tangled together. We have wandered far tonight, through the dust of Macedonian camps, the shadow of a king's ambition, the quiet mystery of a lost tomb, and the soft glow of elite feasts. 2 hours of stories, each a thread in the vast tapestry of Alexander's world. The soldier bending under a shield, the king chasing a dream that outgrew him, the archaeologist brushing dirt from a shard of pottery, the nobles sipping wine while empires shifted. History, when you slow down to listen, is not just dates and battles. It is the weight of a shield on a soldier's shoulder, the flicker of a torch in a king's pavilion, the silence of a tomb that refuses to be found. It is the tension between struggle and privilege, between the many who are forgotten and the few who are remembered. Alexander's life was a storm, bright, brief, and leaving chaos in its wake. But around that storm, life went on. A soldier mending his sandals, a servant pouring wine, a scribe copying a letter home, a merchant haggling in a market far from the battlefields. These are the quiet moments that make history feel human, not legends, but lives, lived in the rhythm of dawn and dusk, of hunger and rest, of hope and weariness. Now, as we let these stories fade, let us return to the present. The bed beneath you is soft, not straw. The air is calm, not thick with dust or the stench of camp. There are no trumpets to rouse you, no marches to endure. You are safe here in this moment, free to let the weight of the past slip away like sand through fingers. The past will always be with us, in fragments and mysteries, in the echoes of lives long gone. But tonight, it has done its work, to remind us that even the greatest storms pass, and that peace, in the end, is the sweetest story of all. Breathe deeply. Let your eyes grow heavy. The stories are over for now. Sleep well. Good night.